Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new stream. Make sure you like this stream down below and subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed yet, which I'm sure many of you people now already have because you're the notification gang. But we have a decent amount of news to cover. Definitely Nikki Haley stepping into the ring for 2024. Nobody asked for this, and I know we've talked about it here and there a little bit on the channel, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more now. And we have train derailments all over the place. We have the woke Super Bowl to an extent, which I'm sure we could kind of touch base on during the stream if you guys want to. And we have more to cover about the 2024 presidential election discussion because more information has come out. We see more attacks on both sides that I think are worth covering. But either way, we have a lot to cover. Make sure you like the stream down below before we get started for sure. But furthermore, I've been busy. I've been working on my recent documentary lately the past few days, which is why I haven't necessarily been able to put out a video yet, but it'll be out probably early next week, the whole final 2022 midterms autopsy report, because we've done a lot of little videos on it. We've touched base on some tidbits and facts that are important for people to have as takeaways, but I think it's about right that we finalize the whole autopsy report with one video. And then we could start talking about things that matter more in terms of the future, 2023, 2024, which we've been touching on, and we're going to touch base on that as well during this live stream, because we have important news. Nikki Haley has announced her presidential bid for 2024, which again, 2024 is coming up in about a year from now. We're going to have the primaries in Iowa, New Hampshire. I think they're moving up Michigan as well, at least on the Democrat side, but I think they are on the Republican side as well. So it's important that we do touch base on this. But what is her end game here? Does she actually think that she's going to get a majority of Republicans on her side, given her stances over the past few years? And she is somebody who is very weak on immigration, on foreign policy. She's very much so an interventionist as well. And we know this. Trade, key issue that helped Trump in the Rust Belt. She's very weak on trade as well. She is indeed a globalist. She is somebody who's going to step into the ring and would probably, in a general election scale, get utterly demolished by Joe Biden. And she has no business being in this race to begin with whatsoever. And in terms of cultural issues, she is the one who spearheaded this, we're going to change all the names. We're going to change the statues. We're going to demolish them if they're of people that the left doesn't happen to like, which doesn't just pertain to Confederate generals. It also pertains to a lot of American historical figures as well. She, while claiming to be a Republican, was one of the people who spearheaded that. And now she wants to step into the ring on the Republican side, on the Republican ticket, throw her hat in the ring, and run for president. That is exactly what she's trying to do. She's going to get probably shellacked in Iowa, in New Hampshire as well. Would be lucky to crack double digits in her home state and would lose. And now you have Tim Scott who might jump in the ring for South Carolina. You talk about the home field advantage. I mean, both of them would be utterly screwed in South Carolina. What is the end game for these people? Why are they throwing their hat in the ring for a presidential race where they have basically zero shot at winning? Whether you like Donald Trump or you like Ron DeSantis for 2024. Most people know where I stand on this. But either way, there's only two viable options. Everybody can really deduce that from spending 5 minutes on either the internet or just browsing right-wing media, even establishment right-wing media. Everybody can tell that this is going to be a two-way race regardless. And Nikki Haley in the race arguably helps Donald Trump. So it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. But the more people you have getting the establishment backing, the more people you have on the Republican side, that's going to help Donald Trump, because you have Trump versus the whole GOP establishment. That is what he went up against back in 2016. He was able to essentially go out there, destroy the whole playing field. Now, you could say now it would be different in 2024 because he's older. If he was just going up against DeSantis, who would be, let's say he's going to bring maximum skill to the game. He's going to go out there and be the most skilled politician that he can be. Well, then maybe there'd be a chance Trump loses the nomination. But if he's going to be going up against this divided field, at least through Super Tuesday, it's going to be hard to deduce how he would possibly lose in 2024. So what is the end game of Nikki Haley? She knows she's not going to win. There's virtually no way that anybody other than Trump or DeSantis is going to be able to get that nomination. Definitely, you could say debates could change people's minds, or the whole election process would cause fluctuation of support of certain candidates. But either way, you could say it's a beta test. Maybe DeSantis flops. Maybe they decide to go with Haley. She's there as a placeholder for at least a little while. And then they'll test her out. And from there, we'll see. But in Haley's mind, assuming DeSantis and Trump are the top two, and the establishment is grooming DeSantis to be their guy, and Trump is going to go out there and do his thing that he's been doing for the past 6-7 years or so, then what we see from that is she's vying for something else other than the presidential slot. And that could be VP. It could be a lot of things. But you talk about the clown car, which is coming, because you have a lot more than Trump and a lot more than even DeSantis that are going to jump in this race. You're going to have people like Nikki Haley, who announced. You have people like John Bolton, total neocon. It's a total comedy at this point, why he would even consider jumping in the race, why anybody would consider him. He's basically Liz Cheney at this point, but a man. And then you have people like Tim Scott, mediocre senators who virtue signal to BLM at every opportunity. You have Mike Pompeo, who is not much better than Nikki Haley. And you have many other people who might be jumping in this race. What are they vying for? Either VP, or they're vying for other spots in the cabinet. That's it. They're going to drop out, probably endorse DeSantis. Maybe some people, depending on the political climate, could endorse Trump even. They're going to need to do everything they can do to subvert his second term. They did everything they could do to subvert his first term. They're going to do the same thing this time around, assuming he gets the nomination. He's going to have a lot of people trying to get in his ear. Lindsey Graham is already doing that. He is ahead of the curve for a reason. And you might see more people jump on that side of things. Or if it seems like DeSantis is running away with the nomination early, let's say that happens. Well, people like Nikki Haley could be jumping on board with him, dropping out early, endorsing him to pad his support. And what that's going to do is allow her chances of being selected as vice president for DeSantis be as high as they possibly can be. And from there, what is that going to do? It's going to increase her political profile, because that's all these career politicians really care about. They want to raise their profile and they want to go from there. So you see people like Haley jumping in the race. You're probably going to see people like Bolton, Pompeo, these loser, weak neocons who you would argue would just support DeSantis so they could get rid of Trump. They're going to jump in, see the way the political climate is shifting, support the person that they view to be most likely to be the nominee, in hopes of the fact that they could either get a VP slot or Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense, or one of these possible positions that they can get. They're going to do everything possible to achieve power, and they're going to be making their deals. And I think a lot of people understand this. Is anyone actually seriously believing that Nikki Haley is going to be sitting in the Oval Office come January of 2025? Of course not. Nobody in their right mind believes this. Why would they? Because it's just unfathomable. Everybody knows that either it's going to be Biden again, because the Dems are set on running him, even though he's old, even though he's very mentally incoherent, he's still the best that they can do. And on top of that, who are the Republicans going to nominate? Either Trump again, maybe DeSantis gets in there and somehow wins the nomination. He's going to have a lot of establishment backing. And we're going to talk about this later in the stream as well, because they're trying to pull one over on the base. But either way, it's one of those three. We'll be in the White House come January 2025. Maybe you could say Biden has a mental issue that is like way bigger than the mental issue he has now. And then we could talk about, okay, maybe they would move on to somebody like Newsom or somebody like Kamala Harris. That is true. But as of right now, it's going to be nobody except for Biden, Trump, or if DeSantis somehow gets the nomination, DeSantis, which we'll talk about that. But either way, I think it's laughable that this would even be something we're even talking about. It's a train wreck. Nikki Haley's campaign is going to be a train wreck if she even lasts up until the Iowa caucus. Will they have these debates? It's an interesting question. Will Trump even go to the debates? I think he should. I think it would be funny. I mean, he's definitely older than he was back in 2016. But if he wants to win that nomination, he's going to have to prove that he is a candidate who could go out there on the debate stage and mog everybody the same way that he went out there and mogged everybody back in 2016. And this is true. So we'll eventually have to wait and see how it goes down. There's a lot we don't know. We can speculate all we want, but it is indeed laughable that they're trying to do this. And I think Haley is like the stopgap measure. They're testing her. You got to test them. They're experiencing with this whole, oh, we'll see if the base likes her. Or we'll see if like the more establishment part of the base is receptive to whatever nonsense that she has to say. And then they'll go from there. And definitely they would prefer Haley to somebody like DeSantis. Of course, we know that. But if not, if they can't get Haley, they will go with DeSantis. And maybe they'll pressure him to get Haley as VP. And if she drops out early, helps him out a lot, endorses him, she'll have a claim to that VP slot, which is something we want to avoid. Even if she's going to claim to be Trump's VP, let's say Trump is running away with the nomination. She gets on Trump's good side. She is a grifter. And we know this. She is a neocon. She is a globalist. She is somebody who we want 1,000 miles away from the White House at all times because of how destructive her worldview is. She's somebody who goes on the Ben Shapiro show, claims that America needs unlimited immigration because we need to enrich our culture, she says. Ignores all the other possible impacts of it. She's somebody who believes that the average American, the people that put Trump in the White House to begin with, they're not good enough for her. That's the type of person that she is. You talk about where she stands on even like trade issues, issues that'll help Republicans out in middle America. She's awful on those as well. And from there, she's DOA, dead on arrival. That's what it means. And we know this by now. And all the other people are arguably even more DOA besides her that are listed on this tweet or wherever. But it's a train wreck, just like what we saw in Ohio, just like what we saw in Texas, which brings us to our next topic, the train derailments, which again, some people might find it boring because a lot of train derailments happen, which is a problem. We have a transportation secretary who's too busy doing unfathomable things with unfathomable parts of his body to even address the problem at hand here. But that's beside the point. What we do know is that this is a massive issue what happened in Ohio. It affected a lot of counties around the Rust Belt in particular. I think it happened even in Mahoning County, which is one of those, I think it was the Clinton-Trump County even. It's one of the counties in the Rust Belt, which happened to be a pivot county or whatever they want to call them. But either way, it is a very, very white working class county. It's a county where Trump did exceptionally well compared to past Republicans in. And you see this here. And there was a train derailment. They released all sorts of toxic chemicals into the air. We didn't hear about it for like a week and a half. And then everybody's talking about it. And some people are going to say it's like America's Chernobyl, which again, I don't think that I would compare it to that because that wiped out many thousands of people to my knowledge. But either way, it is an issue. And the administration currently occupying D.C. doesn't want to do anything about it, doesn't even mention it for a week. And I wonder why. If this happened in some other part of the country, if it happened in San Francisco or Washington, D.C., you would hear nothing but this. But since it was in the middle of nowhere in Ohio, yeah, you don't hear about it. Because the people it affects first and foremost are not the people that are really fans of the regime, that are people that are protected by the regime. So this is something that happens. The whole environmentalist party or whatever doesn't even care for reasons that we understand why. And that's the way that it is. And you look at Ohio gets shafted by the mainstream media. Ohio is one of the key states that, move vastly to the right, like I said, put Trump in the White House, by the way, back in 2016, and is kind of symbolic of middle America. And the regime doesn't care about the average American anymore, especially living in these places. And the Uniparty does nothing about these types of situations. And as a result, well, a lot of people could very well be impacted because of it. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know the health risks of this train derailment. But either way, our transportation system is off the rails, no pun intended. Because you look at Ohio, what's going on there. You look at Texas. You look at South Carolina. There's so many train derailments all over the place. And you could say, well, these other train derailments are only being talked about because of the Ohio thing. And it's like, okay, even if that's true, why do we have so many train derailments in this country? This is 2023, and there's no reason for us to be having this conversation as much as we do. Do you think China or even some of these other countries across the globe that have high-speed rail exactly have these same issues? I mean, maybe to a certain extent, but not to the extent we have here. And what is our transportation secretary doing besides God knows what, which we're not going to mention? But either way, it's ridiculous. So we have a lot of ground to cover, one could say. And high-speed rail is something that's common in, I believe, Europe. It's common in China, Japan, a lot of these other developed countries. Not really here. We don't really have any high-speed rail. We might have some slightly fast trains that go 160 on the way from Boston down to D.C. from time to time, and that's the peak speed that it gets. I mean, you think with Amtrak Joe in control that we would see potential positive improvements with the whole high-speed rail thing. No, we don't see it at all. Absolutely. It's ridiculous. But that's beside the point. We're going to get to Super Chats right now. We're 18 minutes into the live stream. So we're going to pull these up. Let me see what you guys have to say so far. Average Midwesterner says Haley slept around in South Carolina, won't even pull the VP spot. Well, I don't know if that's entirely true, but she probably won't pull the VP spot. And I think it's because even somebody like DeSantis would at least have the political wherewithal to understand that the base despises her and she's a disgrace. Everybody knows it by now. But that's exactly what she is. So, let's see. Sam Madsen says, would Haley lose my state by double digits? Minnesota? I mean, it's possible that she would. I mean, you look at how Scott Jensen did there in the midterms. I mean, he's somebody that is a pushover. He is a very bizarre individual, was a very weird candidate. And he lost by, 8 to 9 points, which is more than what Trump lost the state by in 2020. I could see it. I could see her losing by double digits, absolutely. No questions asked. Christopher Laurie says, my favorite part of Nikki Haley's ad was when she said the GOP has not won the popular vote in 7 elections. Don't care. It does not matter. And second, does she think she can? Yeah, and I don't think she would. I think she would get destroyed. I think it would be a Romney situation all over again. She'd be lucky to win the state of Ohio, which I don't even know if she would. And even then, she's not really that skilled of a politician in terms of appealing to Trump's base. She's not. DeSantis is somebody who I'm not going to say is like guaranteed victory, but at least he understands the way the base thinks. He understands the way the base is moving. And him having this whole, schism with Trump is not arguably helping him tap into that, because a lot of Trump's base is going to view him as a traitor, per se, if he does decide to jump in the race, which, given current comments by him, even comments he made today, it seems as if he will be jumping in the presidential race, because people were asking him. He said, "Wouldn't you like to know?" He didn't even say, "No, I'm focused on Florida," like he was saying until the midterms. No, he's hinting at a presidential run. He's a skilled politician, more so than not. I'm not going to say he's charismatic. I'm not going to say he's guaranteed victory. I'm not even going to say I prefer him over Trump, because I don't, and I've been very vocal as to why. But is he better than somebody like Nikki Haley in terms of the issues? Not only that, but also the ability to win, or to win over the base? Absolutely. I don't really believe that that's even a question, but that's the way I see it. And the popular vote doesn't matter. I'm sick and tired of people thinking that it does. It doesn't. I mean, you win the Electoral College, you play the game you're in. If we were vying for an Electoral College victory, or a popular vote victory, we got that during the 2022 midterms, which were very disappointing. Republicans won the generic ballot by nearly 3 points. It didn't translate to a Senate victory. It barely translated to a House victory. So, either way, what can I say? David Fallout says Trump is peaking. His speeches are inspiring. DeSantis supporter equals pro-Republican establishment. I think there are well-meaning people on both sides of the Trump-DeSantis debate. I think there are some not well-meaning people on both sides as well. But at the end of the day, I will say that there's a reason why all of these mega donors who opposed Trump back in 2016 are lining up behind Ron DeSantis. There's a reason why the Republican establishment is throwing their support behind Ron DeSantis, because they could be grifting off Trump if Trump really was the establishment option. They could be. And there are plenty of flaws about Donald Trump that we could talk about, and we could sit back and, just keep, hammering these points home. And I'll agree with a lot of them. But at the same time, if you dare mention a potential flaw about Ron DeSantis, people are looking the other way. It's because a lot of the establishment conservative media has been basically covering them up under the rug while just promoting DeSantis like he's some sort of, individual who is incapable of wrongdoing, which he's not. He has done plenty of things in Florida that I'm not a fan of. He's done plenty of things in Florida that I am a fan of. I think he is a good example for somebody who has led a state and has terraformed it to be more culturally conservative, more right-leaning, and his, election victory is kind of evidence of it, even though it is inflated because he did spend $90 million more than his opponent. If even Doug Mastriano spent $90 million more than Shapiro up in Pennsylvania, he'd be governor by now. But it's a little beside the point. What I am saying is that people aren't really analyzing the nuances of this debate. And when they view the nuances of the debate, they'll understand that Trump is probably the better choice. And not everyone's going to agree with that take. But I'm just keeping it real as much as I can here. So we will be covering this, and many of the super chats pertain to this, but there was an interesting tweet that I did see from DeSantis' right-hand woman, Christina Pushaw, who said that her best day of her political life was Zelensky's election night victory in Ukraine. That's the best night of her political life, even more so than Trump's win in 2016, apparently, according to her. But she was bragging about DeSantis talking about the jab, which has arguably been the one thing that a lot of Trump supporters have been promoting DeSantis over Trump by, saying that he was better about the whole lockdowns and jab issue. But DeSantis, she's bragging back in mid to late 2021 about DeSantis talking positively about the jab in 1,600 plus public appearances. And you could say, well, Trump said the same thing, and I'll agree with you. But it's your burden of proof to prove that DeSantis is preferable or he's better than Trump. And if you're saying that, oh, well, he praised all of Trump's bad hires too, or that he praised the jab 1,600 plus times, and you're going to say, well, DeSantis is just like Trump without the baggage. And it's like, well, he has Trump's worst attributes also applying to him, plus he's a career politician being funded by the establishment as a pivot vehicle to get rid of Trump, who is indeed flawed, but they still view him as a threat to the system. Honestly, I'm just saying, I think that people need to understand that he's not necessarily our guy if they're well-meaning. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Trump is like perfect either. I'm a little bit disillusioned as well about the primary. I'll probably vote for Trump in the primary. But I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh, well, this guy who's being pushed by the establishment is our guy 100% either. Because he's not. And we'll see how it shakes out. But as of right now, I'm basically sticking with Trump. Because every single flaw that he has also applies to his opponents tenfold. And DeSantis is somebody who doesn't talk about the jab anymore because he's a very skilled politician. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's going to come out here and he's going to basically see if he's able to outflank Trump from the right even. But we'll see if that happens. Everybody in chat is saying R.I.P. Jimmy Carter. I don't know if that's true. A lot of people are also saying Jimmy Carter is fine. This could be a hoax. Whatever. I know the guy's very old. But, I think he's alive, for the record. But I saw a lot of people saying that he was deceased, which doesn't seem to be the case. But either way, I mean, when you're that old, you're bound to have a lot of death hoaxes on about you. So it is what it is. But let's see. We have more super chats I want to get to. 420 live viewers. Make sure you guys like the stream down below. I know it's late. It's past midnight on the East Coast. It's 11:09 here in Texas. So we'll see. David Zintara says this could be Biden's Hurricane Katrina moment. It could be Buttigieg's moment too. Well, Buttigieg is not really a high-profile official. The only reason why we know about him is because of the fact that he ran for president. I mean, he's transportation secretary, and while it would impact him in a future presidential campaign or whatever, I don't think this is individually going to impact him very much. So, we'll see. But I wouldn't say it's Biden's Hurricane Katrina moment either. The media is covering for him nonstop. They weren't covering for Bush back during Hurricane Katrina, but it definitely doesn't make him look good. And it could be wedged against him in a presidential campaign in places like Ohio or even Pennsylvania. And who would I trust to wedge it against him? Probably Trump, assuming he's on message. But we'll have to see. Cameron Campbell says it's not just trains. Remember the trade during Christmas and air travel. Well, I mean, we haven't had a airline passenger crash in this country, to my knowledge, since, 2009, that happened to be fatal. I mean, that's the way I see it. So I don't know if it's, I wouldn't compare the two. I don't know what you're trying to get at there. Niren Null MD says Haley has been politically careful. These are exactly the wrong type of leaders we need. We need leaders with strong, heartfelt beliefs. I don't even know if she's that politically careful. I would say that DeSantis is somebody that is very politically careful. Watch him when he talks. He said a lot of great things recently. He has. You know, he went out there a couple of years ago, whenever he's asked about the WEF, the World Economic Forum, he's given kind of non-answers. Even when it came down to the RNC chair race, he outflanked Trump from the right while simultaneously giving a non-answer, which I found very strange and interesting. And he has this ability to do this. But Nikki Haley is objectively way, way worse. She is way more establishment. And they're probably not going to line up behind her. But at the same time, it's very clear she's doing this for her personal gain. She's doing this so she can posture herself as a future VP, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, or worst case for her, a UN ambassador again. And that's what it's going to come down to. We'll infiltrate an administration, whether if it's Trump's second term or DeSantis's, assuming the Republicans win in 2024, and she will be implementing her own agenda, which is the agenda of the establishment. Let's say DeSantis is genuine on foreign policy, which his track record is a little murky on. But let's say that he decides to appoint her to a high-profile position and goes from there. What is exactly going to happen? Well, she's going to have a lot of pull within his own administration and is going to be controlling a lot of foreign policy, and it's going to be a bad look regardless. And that's what it comes down to. So, let's see. David Duke, I'm assuming that's the NBA player for the the Brooklyn Nets, by the way, says, I wholeheartedly support Nikki Haley. Thank you for the super chat. Retaking the Nation says, we have high-speed rail in Seattle. It only serves the city elites and cost a fortune. High-speed rail is it's cut off a little bit in the super chats. Let me adjust the zoom here. Is a psyop and not better for the environment. It may not be. It may not be. Depends how it's done. But either way, I wouldn't say that our current train system is, and it's a train wreck. That part is very true. We don't have high-tech trains in this country. We're getting outflanked by basically a lot of countries here and there on the whole train issue. Amtrak is a mess. I mean, it's like glorified Greyhound at this point. Based Cato sent a member chat, says, saw that Carrie Lake retweeted you. This is very true. Also, remember that one time a train delayed your live stream. Hashtag train reform. This is true. That was almost 2 years ago. I still lived in Michigan at the time, and it delayed the live stream by 30, 40 minutes. I got pulled over by the police, actually, because I was going too fast, trying to avoid, I guess, like missing my live stream. But even then, I was even more late because I got pulled over. And, you know, I got pizza. That's what I was getting. And I was going to go back there, eat my pizza, and then do the live stream. But I didn't even have a chance to do that, as I essentially stuck behind a train, and I had no other option but to wait there. And I had to speed around, go like 2-3 miles out of the way. And that was a big mess, but I came back to like a few like $100 super chats from people, hoping that sending those super chats would have helped me go live or whatever, which they really didn't, because I was going to go live regardless. But it was a funny moment. I still probably have that stream on the channel somewhere on the Repcast archive playlist. But that is very true. And I don't think that was Amtrak, though. I think that was just like a regular train that was passing through that just took a year to cross the road that I was trying to get back to my then apartment on. But yeah, it's crazy. But I do remember that. That is true. Very esoteric piece of rep lore. David Fallow sent, your attitude is so refreshing. Everything I think. Well, thank you. David D says R.I.P. Jimmy Carter. Well, he's alive to my knowledge. John Waffle, H2P, says not saying DeSantis is horrible, but he will bring the people who screwed up this country, the Bushes and the Cheneys, back into the spotlight. This is a problem people don't understand. Yeah, and that's where the disillusionment for 2024 comes from, is because DeSantis is somebody who will say a lot of the right things. And he's a politician. And he's very rhetorical. And maybe that could help him finesse his way to the White House. I don't know. I don't think he's that electable. I think if he wins, it's by the skin of his teeth. I think if Trump wins, it's by the skin of Trump's teeth. But I will say that the people that DeSantis is going to carry with him are the old guard. And he's somebody that kind of reminds me of Romney 2012, but more skilled and more modern. He's not that charismatic. He will say the right thing. Sometimes it'll come off robotically, but he's not like as establishmentarian as some other people. But no, it's true. And Trump carried a lot of former Bush admins into the White House his first time. I'm not ignoring that. But every single thing that applies to Trump as a criticism also applies to DeSantis. I can't possibly think of a single criticism of Trump that doesn't. And that's the way I see it. So if anybody has a criticism to whatever I just said there, or believes that there is a criticism of Trump that does not apply to DeSantis, feel free to just spitball here. Send a super chat. Let me know in the regular chat as well. But as a result, I just can't think of one. I just can't. It's Cool Guy Rye says the problem with high-speed passenger trains in the U.S. is that we love our personal vehicles and cities are further apart than in Europe. Which, I mean, that is technically true. Just thinking about it, I mean, Houston from Dallas-Fort Worth area is 3-4 hours away. Austin's 2 to 3. San Antonio is probably like 4 to 5. But thinking about it, like, you know, in Germany, a lot of those cities, like the biggest cities in Germany, are way closer to each other, I would assume, than the biggest cities in Texas. And that part is true. But either way, you would think that we would have some sort of advanced railway system that we just don't have. And I know we have planes, we have airports, but even then, they're in third world condition. They are. Our infrastructure is garbage. And people got mad at Trump back in 2016 when he said that, but it's true. I mean, our airports are train wrecks, by and large, compared to airports in other countries. I mean, this is true. So we need to actually revamp our transportation system. And we could have done so if we didn't spend so much money on things over the past 20, 30 years that we should not have spent that money on. But it's ridiculous. Cameron Campbell says 2 questions. Who are your political role models and inspirations? And what would you say is the biggest voting issue? Education, abortions, guns, etc. Well, I mean, we could answer both of those questions. I think that in terms of political role models, I mean, it really depends because there's plenty of them. And in terms of like politicians, everybody has to answer Trump at this point, especially if they are from this generation or just any generic right-wing individual who's like to the right of most neocons. Of course, they're going to pick Trump as a political role model and inspiration. Doesn't mean I agree with him on literally everything ever, but he is somebody who is a political hero. There's plenty of other political heroes as well. I mean, even around the world, people like Viktor Orban. He really holds down the fort of Hungary very well. Keeps it as right-wing as he possibly can. He's somebody who is a dog. He just goes out there and just does whatever he needs to do that he believes is going to protect his country and is politically expedient for him. And he does it. And it works. raising the birth rates from like 1.2 to like 1.7 or whatever. I mean, those are things that make a difference. They really do. There's plenty of them. I'm not going to say that I like look up to commentators, but I think Tucker's done a great job over at Fox for somebody who's at Fox. But yeah, I think that just the struggle that we're in is the inspiration. What we've had to deal with over the past 50, 60 years as a movement is my inspiration. Now, the biggest voting issue I believe to be immigration. Because whatever issue you want to bring up, who's voting on it? The people in this country. Who controls the people in this country? The immigration system. That's it. And if you're going to let in the whole world into this country, you're not going to have the same electorate. So I think immigration is arguably the most important issue. And there's plenty of them. There's plenty of issues that are not talked about in the public domain currently that matter and make a difference as well. Billy Walker sent a member chat, Trump Cheney 2024. Haha, thank you. Real Texan Politics sent a member chat. High-speed rail fans would jump for joy over a line being built, but then realize how many homes and businesses would be torn down. Well, we already have a lot of railroad. I don't understand why we can't possibly convert that into high-speed rail. Now, I'm not like the biggest high-speed rail fan ever. I think that we could possibly make it work in some places. But either way, our transportation system is a disaster. And you're having incidents like this happen constantly that possibly don't even need to be happening to begin with. Our railways are screwed. You have derailments all over the place. Drivers able to just run into obviously if a driver runs into a train, there's going to be some form of derailment. We get that. But it's not just that. And it's not usually done by some lone driver who's drunk or happens to be erratic or on some sort of medication prescribed to them by Big Pharma or whatever. Either way, there is a problem with our railways and they need to be fixed. Now you have the whole UFO thing people are talking about. I don't know what's the real extent of that. Could be a distraction. I don't know. I haven't looked into it that much. Then you have the whole Super Bowl wokeness. They're playing the Black National Anthem before the National Anthem. You're not advertising it as such, but apparently there's a Black National Anthem. It's like Lift Every Voice and Sing. Some old song from the 1800s, by the way. And it's never been played before. In our entire lifetimes, a lot of people probably never heard of the song. It's being played at the Super Bowl in front of 100 million people before the national anthem. Why? Divisiveness. Obviously, that's part of it. Wokeness. Promoting this racial divide in our country. That's been there for a while. They're using it as a potential platform for the left to drive that wedge, to drive the dividing wedge. And this is something that they've done for quite some time. Now, the Super Bowl itself was meh. The game itself wasn't woke necessarily. It was, exciting until the very end. The refs decide to blow it with a very weak call that arguably should not have been a call to begin with. But the whole national anthem thing, ridiculous. Good job for Kerry Lake for not standing for that, by the way. And they played it for a reason. It's the whole part of the whole woke wave, BLM nonsense. And it's what they do. Are we really surprised? It's one country. It's one nation. You have one national anthem. No, they're going to do everything they possibly can do to create different Americas within America to spark this divide. and it's ridiculous. So let's see here. You have more super chats. Republican Californian says, what's your max bench press? 185 is my max, which is more than what I weigh. So I'm not necessarily like upset about that fact. Now, I'm sure I probably could bench more, but haven't worked out in like a week or so. So it's been a while. But PK says it's sad how George Santos ran a better campaign than some Republican rhinos like O'Day and Jesse Otto Gilbert. Well, all he did was ride Zeldin's coattails. He's not going to win another term. He's not going to run for another term. But what can I say? Ukinga Chungus says, as someone who wants Trump to be the nominee, his age concerns me at this point, whereas DeSantis is younger, although I want him to stay in Florida. I mean, he'll be there for 4 years. And by the time he leaves office, I believe he'll be younger than Biden when Biden left office, or will have left office in retrospect in 2025. So, is what it is. Billy Walker says, to me, my biggest issue is foreign politics, since there's so many more hawks who fund the military-industrial complex than open border nuts. Well, I think the two tie together. It's all globalism. Foreign policy and the immigration debate are both national security issues. They're how you view America's role in the rest of the world, whether you're taking in all these people or you're sending your money to all of these nations who are probably going to squander it away on their own corruption. Cough, cough, Ukraine, cough, cough. But we get it. Also, Billy Walker says, I was at a bar during the Super Bowl, everyone booed. They probably should. And I saw the call. And I don't know if your super chat's referring to the whole wokeness or the mediocre halftime show or the ending. But, I mean, the guy grabbed the jersey. It was not particularly hard. And if this was the NFL 5 to 10 years ago, very good chance they don't make that call. But they did anyways. And the Eagles were dumb at the end not to pull the guy in the end zone. They possibly could have done that, got the ball back, probably would have won or forced overtime or something. But, you know, it is what it is. The enjoyment of the game was not very high. It should not have been Eagles Chiefs to begin with. The Bengals probably should have won. I think there were arguably more bad calls in the AFC Championship game than there were in the Super Bowl itself. And talk about who should have been in the playoffs. Arguably one of the worst officiated fourth quarters and overtimes I've ever seen was in the Seahawks-Rams game in Week 18. Which, again, if the Rams would have won that game, the Lions would have made the playoffs, who were red hot and possibly could have done some damage. Not even saying they would have beaten San Francisco, but it would have made for a hell of a lot more entertaining wild card weekend. That much I very well can say. But, yeah, whatever. Real Texan Politics is having two national anthems can easily be a slippery slope if we're not careful. America will only have one national anthem, and it won't be the Star-Spangled Banner. No, it won't. And yet people sitting down for the national anthem. And some of them were like, oh, it's my protest. But you also had a lot of other people who were saying, oh, well, it's racist or whatever. Oh, there's a second verse that mentions slaves that doesn't even mention slavery in a positive light, but it mentions slavery, so we have to sit down for the national anthem that doesn't even mention it. And it's like, okay, well, you want a national anthem. This is about replacing America's founding. Same thing with Juneteenth, which was not a thing until recently, at least outside of the state of Texas. And then you're seeing this black national anthem, which was really never a thing that probably 10% of the population knew about beforehand. Probably less than half of black Americans knew about beforehand. Now, that's replacing the national anthem on the world stage because that's what the Super Bowl is watched by. So you're looking at what's happening here. It's very deliberate. Now they're having both together, which again, this is a national anthem that's not even a national anthem. It's just a song that's been around for 200 years, but it's being called that. It's being played right before the national anthem. Why? It's part of the woke agenda, of course, but also it's replacing the national anthem as well. And that's something that's flown under the radar, but people need to pay attention to it. Andrew Adams, his thoughts on the Texit movement and support for secession gaining massively throughout the South. Well, possibly because they just don't like Biden. That's why you're seeing secession claims skyrocket in red states. And the same thing happened in California back in 2016. It's not going to happen. You're not going to have this peaceful national divorce myth, pipe dream. The left doesn't want to leave you alone. They want to control you. And if you saw states secede, they would be met with military action from the woke U.S. military at the command of Brandon. And that is true. Frosty says, do you believe in the Armenian genocide? If I believe it happened, yes. Cameron Campbell says, personally, as a young person, I would say entertainment and education. I go to my peers, and that's how they shape their ideas. Thanks for the super chat. PK says, the Michigan GOP chair election looks like a mess. The Michigan GOP is a mess. The state of Michigan is a mess as a result. Sam Madsen says, is it a coincidence that when all this woke stuff took off in like 2015, that's when the map realigned? Yes, but then the Republicans, including Trump, by the way, doubling down on the woke stuff and trying to like create this conservative version of it, it doesn't pan out. It doesn't help you. And that's not something that should be a part of our electoral strategy either, because you're leaving votes off the table by pandering to groups that are never going to vote for you at all. PK says, I don't get the Pennsylvania dooming from the midterms fluke. I mean, if you look at 2014, you could maybe make that inference, but at the same time, it was a disaster. Now, I encourage people to watch my last video because I kind of outlined it very well, that if they actually find a way to navigate the electoral system well, the way they did in that special election, well, I mean, there is a chance for them, but we'll have to see. DJ Aftershock says Rufus wins 80% of the black vote by saying the N-word. I don't think that'd be the case, but I think Rufus would win 100% of the vote, period, because Rufus is Rufus. You know, he's an interesting character. Yeah, that would totally play out well. I mean, there's a lot of Rufus lore that we've covered on the channel. I think some people probably don't even know who Rufus is, but you have this Twitter user who's a very eccentric individual who came out of nowhere, who is vehemently pro-DeSantis, like thinks Trump he is like the Antichrist or something. It's insane. But let's see. Cameron Campbell says, my best friend's mom is an immigrant. When she saw people kneeling, she was not happy, told us people hate America, but when they leave, but they will never leave because it's free. I mean, that part is technically true. I mean, a lot of the people that are complaining about America or even like capitalism or whatever, it might be like a boomer take, but they do traffic in the same system that they claim to be opposing. They are the system. That part is true. But they're opposing it, so you know, they're just a part of the controlled opposition, one could say. But it's not even opposition. They're just playing victim so they could get whatever they want. And they just it's either they're just ignorant and don't realize the system's on their side, or they're just working within the system to claim to be against it because that's what sells. And that's what's sold in this country on the left for a while. Christopher Laurie says, honestly, I don't think secession is realistic. I think what realistic is the country dividing into a confederation with weak central government, considering how divided we are, similar to empires before. Well, what is true is that federalism might be the end goal for the right. I think you look at, maybe you'll see like a confederation of states come together and create their, like, I don't know, like pro-life zones or pro-gun zones or whatever. But at the end of the day, federalism might be the last resort for certain states, to just have a weakened federal government and allow the states to have more control and have like these supercharged governors who are strong leaders who will protect their states and make sure that they're going to remain conservative and unpalatable to the opposition, kind of like what we've seen in Florida, but like on steroids. Yeah, maybe we could see that as like the end, like last ditch resort, but I don't know. Stephen Lee says Rufus would spurg out if his golden boy DeSantis doesn't run. I mean, if DeSantis doesn't run, I would just laugh. I think it'd be hilarious. I mean, you have so many people who are just hyping this guy up. Oh, Blumf is gone. DeSantis is going to be the future. He's going to carry the torch. Even though he's going to be funded by all the people who oppose Trump from the very beginning. And DeSantis doesn't decide to run, it'd be hilarious. I mean, why not? But I do think that the world where DeSantis doesn't run just doesn't exist. And a lot of people would then view him as weak, as, oh, Trump's attacking him. Why is he not responding? Why is he not running? Like, you'll also have people that are going to be contrarian and are going to go with that angle. And maybe it would hurt his future political aspirations. Who knows? What I do know is that Trump is attacking DeSantis. Some attacks probably are more effective and have more merit than others, of course. But if DeSantis doesn't run, that's going to be all for nothing. And Trump knows DeSantis is running. Trump is well connected. He's been out of politics for 2 years, but he's still well connected. He knows DeSantis is going to run. He knows people have been propping him up. Otherwise, he wouldn't attack him. Why would he attack him? He's like known within the base, for better or worse, whether people think he's overrated or not, as being like the MAGA governor. So who knows? Take Selassie says, who has fallen off harder, Tubbs or Empire State Poll? I don't know. You're dealing with the Electabro Twitter users who have probably 1,000 followers on average. I don't know how they could possibly fall off super hard if they're really not on to begin with. I will say that much. But either way, the takeaway from the midterms has been in very bad faith from all these people. Which brings us to our next documentary, which we're going to be covering all of this in, by the way. Maybe not attacking individuals, but attacking the whole narrative that Blumf cost the midterms. It's like, yeah, no, not really, when you look into the actual facts. But I will say, this is the last call for Super Chats. We're going to end the stream pretty shortly here. But if you guys have anything else to say, I encourage you to send it in now, so we can get to it, and then we could wrap it up here, because I know it's getting kind of late. I'm kind of getting a little dehydrated, haven't had really a lot of water. So, yeah. But either way, you have a lot going on. You have Nikki Haley announcing her presidential run, which is going nowhere. And that's very obvious. What is she vying for? What are the others vying for? Probably VP or some other cabinet position in this future Republican administration. So we'll see. You have this train derailment craziness going on. You have a mediocre Super Bowl which may not have been woke as some Super Bowls in years past, but is still woke. You see the Black National Anthem being played before the national anthem. You see it being validated as a song representing our country that most people haven't heard of, partially because they're replacing our national anthem as we speak, causing woke divisiveness. And you also see the 2024 news ramping up. Trump also, which I didn't cover this in this stream, allegedly thinking of nicknames for Ron DeSantis. He denied that he's doing that. I think he claims he's sticking with DeSanctimonious, which might be true. It could be. But either way, it's going to be an ugly primary cycle. It's better that the ugliness gets out of the way first and foremost. I think DeSantis should attack Trump. I think it'd be entertaining to see them go back and forth. I think sorting out the, divide within the base early is better than, dealing with it 2024 March or April and a heated primary when you have a presidential election that's less than 7 months away. So we'll see. But either way, we're still here. So doesn't seem like we have any more super chats. I think we're going to end the stream. So make sure you guys like the stream before you go. Subscribe if you haven't yet. And I will see you guys probably with a video tomorrow. Probably. And maybe a stream this weekend, probably Sunday. Mainly because of the fact that football's over, Super Bowl's over. So might as well take up the airwaves. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle out.